Philadelphia has a way of showing contrast in quiet but honest ways. One minute you're walking past polished corporate towers, a few streets over, life feels different, real, loud, unfiltered. Jennifer had grown used to moving between those worlds every day, carrying her cleaning cart through the same glass lobby that reflected everything she wasn't supposed to be. To most people, she was invisible, just the woman pushing supplies from floor to floor. What they never imagined was that she held a doctorate she no longer spoke about, a past full of academic promise that didn't protect her from bills or the job market's cold reality. So she cleaned. She worked hard. She minded her business. This evening, the lobby gleamed with the usual end-of-day shine. Suits drifted toward the exit, rehearsing confidence as they walked. Jennifer kept her eyes low, moving around the marble pillar with steady hands and practiced silence. Up ahead, she heard a cluster of voices, smooth, confident, and loud enough to claim the space. Investors. You could always tell. Their laughter had a certain shine to it, matching the building's walls. And leading them, standing like the room belonged to him alone, was Andrew, 35. CEO, polished in every sense. His suit sat on him like a personal endorsement deal. He spoke with the rhythm of someone used to being the smartest in every room, or at least performing like he was. Jennifer wasn't listening on purpose, but his voice carried. Our numbers are clear, Andrew said, gesturing confidently. Our model shows exactly what causes what. The investors nodded politely. They didn't look convinced, just entertained. Jennifer angled her cart to slip by unnoticed, but one of the investors stepped back mid-laugh and bumped the cart's handle. A bottle wobbled, tipped, and a light mist sprayed into the air. Not dramatic, but noticeable. The group paused. Andrew turned. His eyes landed on Jennifer with a faint expression, like she had disrupted something important. His smile remained in place, but it shifted just enough to tell her this moment could go wrong. Jennifer straightened the cart and quietly said, "Sorry, I'll move." Andrew lifted a hand. "It's fine," he replied, easygoing on the surface, but his smile didn't match the tone. He turned to the investors, then back to Jennifer, including her in the edge of the conversation without inviting her. "We're just discussing analytics," he said lightly. "Cause and effect, simple stuff. Even she gets that." There it was, the attempt to be charming at someone else's expense. Jennifer kept her expression calm. She'd lived long enough to know when not to react. Andrew smirked slightly and continued, "For example, if users receive our push notifications and spend more money, that means notifications cause spending. Straightforward." A tiny beat of silence followed. Jennifer felt something tighten in her chest. Not anger, not humiliation, just exhaustion. The kind that comes from being underestimated repeatedly. She lifted her gaze for the first time. Andrew waited, expecting agreement. Jennifer didn't give it. Instead, she said one word, gentle, clear, perfectly measured. "Causation." Andrew blinked. "Sorry." "Causation," she repeated, her tone steady. "Correlation isn't enough to claim a cause. Your conclusion needs controls." The investors shifted. The woman among them raised her brows with thinly veiled amusement. "Technically correct," she murmured. Another investor nodded, impressed. "She's right." A shift rippled through the group, not loud but unmistakable. Andrew's smile faltered. Jennifer held her posture, neither confrontational nor submissive, just honest. Andrew, trying to regain footing, chuckled and said, "Where'd you learn that?" Jennifer answered plainly, "School." Andrew laughed softly, assuming that was the end of it. Jennifer didn't laugh with him. He frowned slightly. "Which school?" Jennifer took a breath. The truth shouldn't have required courage, but it did. "I have a Ph.D." Silence. Short, sharp, undeniable. One investor coughed as if trying not to react too visibly. Another straightened, suddenly interested. Andrew's jaw moved as if he was recalculating everything he thought he knew. Jennifer lowered her eyes again, gripping her cart. "I'll continue my shift," she said softly. "No dramatics, no smugness, just dignity." She pushed the cart away, leaving Andrew to face the weight of what he just revealed. Not about her, but about himself. Welcome to Mr. Gray Family, a storytelling universe built for people who crave meaning, emotion, and unforgettable narratives. Here, every story begins with a spark and ends with a feeling you'll carry long after the video ends. Love, betrayal, family, secrets, lessons, it's all here, wrapped in immersive narration that holds you close from the first word to the last. If you're searching for stories that touch your heart, challenge your mind, and keep you coming back, subscribe now. Your story begins the moment you choose to stay. Family, if you're hooked already, hit that like button so this story can reach more people. Jennifer didn't stop walking until she reached the staff corridor, where the polished beauty of the lobby gave way to plain walls and quiet hallways. The moment she crossed that threshold, she exhaled, a slow breath she'd been holding without realizing it. Her hands trembled slightly on the cart handle. Not from fear, not from shame, just the raw weight of what had happened. Inside the lobby, she had stood her ground. Out here, the reality of it finally settled. She leaned against the wall for a moment, eyes closed, letting her heartbeat settle into something steady again. The encounter replayed in her mind, not the embarrassment, but the accuracy of her statement. She hadn't corrected Andrew to challenge him. She corrected him because the information mattered, because sloppy conclusions could mislead entire rooms full of powerful people. And yet, she hadn't expected her honesty to cut that deep. She resumed her shift. The building was quieter now, its after-hours hum predictable. Jennifer cleaned methodically, letting the rhythm comfort her. Wipe, rinse, disinfect, refill. These were tasks she could control, unlike the storm she had just walked through. Still, every so often, the lobby moment surfaced. The investors' faces, their surprise, the way Andrew's confidence slipped for the first time, the way the room tilted when she revealed her degree. A few floors above, Andrew was still in the meeting area with the investors. He tried to continue the presentation, but their questions sounded different now, sharper, more pointed. One of them quietly asked for clarification on his earlier statement about causal claims. Another mentioned revisiting the experimental design. Andrew answered, but the smooth rhythm he normally displayed was missing. His mind wasn't on the presentation anymore. It was on her, Jennifer, the cleaner who corrected him with the calm precision of someone who understood the subject better than he did in that moment. And when she said she had a PhD, something in his chest tightened in a way he couldn't quite name. Shock, yes. Embarrassment, absolutely. But beneath that was something else, something that made him shift uncomfortably in his tailored suit. He had misjudged her. Completely. Downstairs, Jennifer finished cleaning a conference room and carried her supplies toward the elevators, still grappling with the confrontation in pieces. She didn't regret speaking up. She regretted that she had been cornered into defending her intelligence in the first place. She regretted that she had to weigh every word so she wouldn't appear rude or emotional. That was the quiet burden she carried every day, to be brilliant without appearing threatening, to be skilled without drawing attention, to survive without being noticed. As she entered the elevator, 2 employees stepped in behind her. They lowered their voices, not realizing she could hear. "Did you hear about the CEO downstairs?" "Apparently he got corrected by the cleaning lady," one whispered. "Seriously? Someone said she shut down his whole argument." "That can't be true. People exaggerate." Jennifer didn't react. She stared at the elevator doors, hands steady at her sides. Their words didn't wound her. They simply confirmed what she already knew. People were only comfortable with intelligence when it came from the places they expected. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped out without a word. Meanwhile, Andrew stood at the window overlooking the city, the investors having left. Night stretched across Philadelphia, and he felt unusually exposed. He replayed every detail of the encounter, her tone, her clarity, the way she stood there without flinching. He wasn't angry at her. He was angry at himself. How did I miss her? He murmured under his breath. How had he walked past her for months without noticing the quiet strength she carried? Without seeing her as more than the uniform she wore? Andrew prided himself on reading people quickly. Yet somehow, the woman he dismissed in seconds had just revealed more depth in one sentence than he had in the entire meeting. Her voice stayed in his mind. Causation. He rubbed a hand across his face. He had looked foolish, but it wasn't her fault. She didn't intend to embarrass him. She had simply spoken the truth. And truth has a way of cutting cleaner than insults ever could. Back on the lower level, Jennifer deposited fresh supplies in the janitor's closet and grabbed her coat. Her shift wasn't quite over, but she needed a moment alone. She walked to the break room and sat down slowly, her shoulders settling as she let her thoughts quiet. She wasn't proud of the exchange. She wasn't ashamed of it either. She was simply tired. She stared at the vending machine across from her and whispered, "I shouldn't have had to say anything." But she knew why she did. Knowledge didn't disappear just because someone tried to shrink her. She finished her brief pause, stood, and went back to work. Above her, Andrew remained at the window, unable to shake the feeling that a single moment had just shifted something important inside him. A cleaner with a doctorate, a quiet correction that exposed the gaps in his leadership. He didn't know her story yet, but he wanted to. And for the first time in a long while, the CEO wasn't thinking about numbers, projections, or investor confidence. He was thinking about the woman who spoke one word and changed the entire direction of his evening. The building grew quieter as night settled over Philadelphia. Most employees had gone home, leaving only the steady hum of ventilation and the occasional distant footstep echoing through the hallways. Jennifer moved from floor to floor with practiced efficiency, but her mind wasn't cooperating. Her hands performed familiar tasks, restocking, wiping surfaces, emptying bins, yet her thoughts wandered back to the lobby moment as if she were still standing under those polished lights. For the first time in a long while, she felt exposed. Not because of shame, she didn't regret correcting Andrew, but because her intelligence, something she had spent years keeping tucked beneath silence, had slipped out in front of powerful people. She had tried so hard to blend into the background, to draw no attention, to survive quietly. But the moment she spoke, the room shifted. People who had never looked at her twice suddenly saw her differently. Visibility came with its own kind of heaviness. She paused in one of the offices she was cleaning, leaning on the back of a chair. Her chest felt tight, not from fear but from the pressure of balancing two identities the world rarely allowed in the same space. Cleaner, scholar. People understood one or the other, not both. Carrying both often meant pretending one didn't exist. She took a breath, picked up her supplies, and kept moving. On the 15th floor, she ran into two employees on their way out. They offered forced smiles, the kind people wear when they don't know how to respond to someone they underestimated. Jennifer nodded politely, giving them nothing more. She didn't need their approval, but she could feel their stares as she walked past, the weight of their curiosity trailing her like an unwelcome shadow. In the break area, another pair of employees whispered near the coffee machine. They thought they were being discreet. "I heard she corrected the CEO like it was nothing," one murmured. "Who does that?" The other whispered back. "You think it's true?" "No idea." But people said she was calm. Jennifer placed a trash bag in the bin and walked out before they noticed her. Their voices didn't hurt, but they reminded her of something important. People loved a story more than they loved truth. By tomorrow, there would be 10 versions of what happened. None of them would capture the reality of a woman defending her dignity without raising her voice. She finished wiping the counter, turning the cloth over in her hand, and muttered to herself, "I didn't ask for attention." But attention had found her anyway. She returned to the hallway, rolled her cart toward the service elevator, and pressed the button. When the doors opened, she stepped inside and closed her eyes for a moment. The quiet wrapped around her like a temporary shield. She needed that. Space to breathe before continuing the shift. "Tomorrow," she whispered. I keep my head down. It wasn't defeat. It was caution. She had lived long enough to understand that one sharp moment could attract the wrong kind of interest. People in high places didn't enjoy being corrected publicly, even if she had done it respectfully. She needed to be careful. What she didn't know was that upstairs, Andrew wasn't thinking about retaliation. He was thinking about meaning. He had returned to his office after the investors left, but he hadn't opened his laptop or checked a single message. Instead, he sat at his desk with the lights dimmed, elbows resting on polished wood, replaying everything in his mind. Jennifer's voice, her clarity, her steadiness. He had worked with analysts, consultants, advisors, people with impressive backgrounds, but none of them had spoken with the mix of precision and calm confidence she had shown. He had embarrassed himself more than she had embarrassed him. That realization clung to him like a reminder he couldn't ignore. His fingers tapped lightly against the desk. He tried to understand why her correction bothered him more than the investor's questions. It wasn't pride alone. It wasn't just a bruised ego. It was the human part, the part that recognized he had judged someone unfairly, quickly, carelessly. "How many times have I walked past her?" He whispered to the empty room. "How did I not know who she was?" He stood and walked to the large window overlooking the city, hands in his pockets. The city lights glimmered, each tiny square representing someone going about their life. He had built a company that demanded speed, quick decisions, confident claims. He prided himself on precision. Yet he had spoken with certainty and been corrected by someone he barely acknowledged before today. His reflection in the glass looked different now, like a version of himself he didn't entirely trust. He didn't feel angry. He felt accountable. Jennifer's word, causation, echoed in his mind, not as an insult, but as a reminder of how easily he could miss the truth if he moved too fast, talked too confidently, or forgot to see the people in front of him. He rubbed his forehead and murmured, "I owe her more than an apology." It wasn't about professionalism. It wasn't even about pride. It was about the sudden, sharp awareness that he had overlooked someone whose depth he hadn't taken the time to see. Downstairs, Jennifer wiped the last of the desks, gathered her supplies, and made her way toward the janitor's closet. Her shift was ending soon. She hung her gloves, washed her hands, and pulled her coat tighter as she prepared to step outside. She didn't know it yet, but tonight had set something in motion, something that would change both of their lives far beyond a single moment in a glass lobby. Jennifer's shift ended late, the kind of late that makes the train ride home feel heavier than usual. When she stepped into her apartment that night, she didn't unpack her thoughts. She just showered, changed, and sat quietly on her bed until her breathing finally slowed. But morning didn't give her time to linger. Her second life awaited her. 2 days each week, she tutored students at a community center near the edge of West Philly. The building wasn't fancy, but the kids filled it with a liveliness no office tower could match. As soon as she stepped inside, she heard a familiar voice call out, "Miss Jennifer, are we doing algebra today? Please say no." She smiled, just a small one, but real. The students always managed to pull one from her. "We're doing whatever helps you pass your exams," she answered, setting her bag down. Groans filled the room, but their eyes brightened. They loved her, not because she made math easy, but because she made them feel capable. She didn't talk down to them. She challenged them and laughed with them and reminded them that brilliance wasn't reserved for a particular zip code. One of the girls raised her hand midway through the session. "Miss Jennifer, why do you know so much? Did you go to a big school or something?" Jennifer paused for a fraction of a second. "Yes," she said gently. "But what matters is that all of you can reach any school you want." They nodded, accepting her answer without pushing further. Adults always pried. Kids accepted what you gave them. When tutoring ended, she packed up her materials and walked through the neighborhood toward the salon. The block carried its usual rhythm, neighbors on stoops, someone grilling, children arguing about whose turn it was at jump rope. This was home. Not perfect, not polished, but layered with warmth. The salon door chimed when she entered. The space buzzed with conversation and hair dryers, the kind of place where people shared stories without formality. Keisha spotted her instantly. "Well, look who finally decided to bless us with her presence." Jennifer rolled her eyes, settling into the chair. "I'm here, aren't I?" The stylist draped the cape around her shoulders. "So what we doing today?" Jennifer sighed. "Something simple. I have 2 jobs. I need hair that survives life." The salon laughed. Keisha leaned over from her seat. "Forget the hair. Tell me why you look like you're hiding something." Jennifer stared at her reflection. She didn't want to talk about the lobby incident. It already felt too loud inside her mind. But Keisha wasn't the type to let silence linger. "Spill," Keisha insisted. Jennifer hesitated, then recounted the story piece by piece, the cart accident, the investors, the comment Andrew made, her correction, the single word that shifted the entire room. When she finished, Keisha's jaw dropped. "Wait, you mean to tell me you corrected the CEO in front of his guests? You? My quiet queen who minds her business?" Jennifer groaned softly. "It wasn't like that." "Oh no, it was exactly like that," Keisha declared, slapping the armrest. "You shut him down. I love it." Jennifer rubbed her temple. "Keisha, I didn't want attention. I just didn't want him saying the wrong thing." Keisha studied her. "So why do you look stressed? He deserved it. Men in power need reality checks." "It's not about that," Jennifer answered. "I don't want problems at work. I clean floors. I don't want to be the subject of whispers." Keisha responded with a knowing smirk. "Girl, you need to stop thinking chaos follows you everywhere. Sometimes the truth just lands where it needs to land." Jennifer shook her head. "No drama, please. I want 0 drama in my life right now." Keisha said, unconvinced. "But powerful men don't like being corrected. Be careful." Jennifer exhaled slowly. That warning settled heavier than she wanted it to. She finished at the salon, paid, and walked home through the evening breeze. Her phone buzzed twice, but she ignored it. She wanted quiet. She wanted routine. She wanted life to return to what it was before the lobby moment. But deep inside, she sensed something had shifted in a direction she couldn't yet predict. Drop a comment if you've ever been judged before, knowing your worth. Jennifer reached her apartment just after sunset, the sky still carrying hints of orange behind the rooftops. She unlocked her door, slipped inside, and let the quiet settle around her. She placed her bag on the small table near the entryway, kicked off her shoes, and leaned back against the door. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. After the week she'd had, she needed silence more than anything else. She lit a small lamp, poured herself a glass of water, and sat on the edge of her bed, letting the stillness calm her. But the buzzing persisted, not constant, just steady enough to demand attention. Finally, she picked up her phone. One new message, unknown number. Her stomach tightened. She opened it. Jennifer. This is Andrew. I'd like to speak with you. She stared at the screen for a long moment. She hadn't expected him to reach out. She certainly hadn't expected him to find her number. Her thumb hovered, but she didn't respond. She placed the phone face down on the bed and walked to the kitchen, pacing lightly. She heated some leftover food, but her appetite had vanished. She kept replaying his message, not the words themselves, but the pressure behind them. When employers reach out after a moment like that, it usually meant one thing: confrontation. Her phone buzzed again. She returned slowly, hesitant. I want to apologize. In person. Jennifer closed her eyes. Of all the things she wanted from life right now, a face-to-face conversation with the CEO of her building was at the very bottom of the list. She didn't want confrontation. She didn't want attention. And she didn't want to be the focus of someone else's guilt. She typed, "You can apologize in writing. No need for a meeting." She hit send before she could overthink it. A response arrived almost immediately. It wouldn't be sincere. "I want to get it right." She scoffed softly. Sincere or not, it felt like too much. Too fast. Too intrusive. She didn't want her quiet life disrupted by someone who lived in rooms she would never belong to. She typed again, "No." This time, she waited for a reply. Nothing came. Not for an hour, not for two. Relieved, she plugged her phone into the charger and prepared for bed. But early the next morning, while she was making tea, her phone buzzed again. "I reviewed our hiring system yesterday. I found your name." Jennifer froze, tea bag in hand. Her name? In what context? She clicked to open the full message. "You applied for an analyst role last year. I didn't know. I'm trying to understand what happened to your application." For a moment, she couldn't breathe. She remembered the job posting vividly, how she had tailored her resume, how she had written a careful cover letter explaining her expertise without sounding desperate. She remembered the rejection email too. Short, polite, final. Jennifer stared at the screen, heart thudding. She typed slowly, "Yes, I applied." Her phone buzzed again, longer this time, as if he had typed and rewritten the message several times. "I want to fix whatever prevented a fair review. Please meet with me, not for an apology, for correction." Correction. Not pity, not sympathy. Correction. The word unsettled her, not in a bad way, but in a way she didn't have language for yet. She sank into her chair, reading the message again. She had lived in systems like this long enough to know that outcomes weren't always shaped by malice. Sometimes the damage came from indifference, from automated filters that erased people without ever learning their names. But still, why would he care enough to dig? She sipped her tea and typed, "Why are you doing this?" His reply came slower than the others. "Because you deserved better." A strange feeling rose in her chest, something tight but almost warm. She wasn't used to being acknowledged by people in power. She wasn't used to being seen at all. But she wasn't naive. Good intentions didn't erase consequences. She typed carefully, "I don't need special treatment. I just want fairness." He responded, "Exactly. That's why I want to meet. To start fixing the system." Jennifer read the message several times, unsure whether to trust it. She didn't know if this was guilt, responsibility, or something else, but she couldn't deny the shift happening, not in her life, but in his. There was a flicker of something she didn't want to name yet. Not hope, not excitement, just possibility. She typed nothing else. She needed time to think. She set her phone aside and finished her tea, grounding herself in the quiet. Then, unexpectedly, her phone buzzed one last time. "If you don't want to meet, I'll respect that, but I'm fixing the system either way." She swallowed. It was the first message that made her pause in a different way. Not pressure, not insistence. Accountability. Jennifer leaned back, realizing her guarded certainty had shifted the slightest bit. Not enough to be comfortable, but enough to make room for consideration. Maybe. Just maybe. Jennifer arrived at work the next evening determined to keep everything the same. She moved through the employee entrance, tied her apron, collected her supplies, and began her shift with the same steady rhythm she had relied on for months. If she kept her routine tight enough, maybe her thoughts wouldn't wander to the messages waiting on her phone. But the universe had plans she didn't authorize. Just 30 minutes into her shift, her supervisor approached. Calm face, neutral expression, clipboard in hand. "Jennifer," he said, "the CEO wants to see you. Top floor." Her entire body went still. "Now?" she asked. He nodded. He insisted. Jennifer closed her eyes briefly. She had wanted time, days, weeks, not a confrontation tonight. Still, she straightened her posture. Whatever this was, she would not walk into it small. She followed the supervisor to the elevator. The ride upward felt longer than usual, each floor humming past her like a reminder that she didn't belong in this part of the building. But the doors opened, and she stepped out anyway. The top floor looked different at night. Dim lights, quiet hallways, and a view of the city stretching far into the dark. The air felt still, clean, focused. Her supervisor gestured toward a conference room, then walked away without explanation. Jennifer took a breath and stepped inside. Andrew stood alone near the long table. No investors, no assistants, no audience, just him. He turned when he heard the door. "Jennifer," he said, his voice far softer than she expected. She stayed near the entrance. "I'm on shift. I can't be away for long." "I understand," he replied. "I won't take much of your time." A pause settled between them. Not tense, just unfamiliar. He seemed different tonight. Less guarded, less polished, more human. "I wanted to apologize," Andrew said. "Properly." Jennifer didn't respond. She waited. He exhaled. "The way I spoke to you in the lobby wasn't acceptable. I embarrassed you in front of others, and I didn't consider how my words would land. That was wrong." Jennifer watched him carefully. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't deflecting. He wasn't performing. He was simply stating the truth. "I'm sorry," he finished quietly. Jennifer nodded once. "Thank you," but she didn't step closer. Andrew continued. "I also looked into the hiring system. I found issues, serious ones, filters that dismissed candidates for reasons unrelated to ability. It wasn't intentional, but the harm was real." Jennifer's chest tightened slightly. She crossed her arms, not defensively, but to anchor herself. "So you saw how I vanished from the process," she said. Andrew lowered his gaze. "Yes, and it shouldn't have happened." Silence again. Not uncomfortable, just weighted with meaning neither of them knew how to handle yet. Jennifer spoke first. "I don't want special treatment. I don't want a job because you feel bad." He looked up immediately. "I'm not offering you that. I'm offering fairness, and your insight." She tilted her head. "Insight? I want to fix the filter," he said. "But I shouldn't do that alone. You understand the flaws better than anyone here." Jennifer held his gaze, studying him. She wasn't used to leaders admitting gaps in their systems, let alone asking for help from someone who mopped their floors an hour ago. "Why me?" she asked. "Because you saw the problem before I did," he replied. "And because you deserve a voice in correcting what affected you." His tone wasn't flattering or dramatic. It was steady, grounded, real. Still, she wasn't ready to soften. "You realize this could be viewed as favoritism," she said. "People talk. I can handle what people say," Andrew replied. "I'm asking because it's right, not because it's comfortable." Jennifer felt a flicker of something, a quiet, reluctant respect. Not trust, not yet, but something that shifted her stance slightly. "What exactly would you need?" she asked. "A consultant," he said. "Your expertise, your analysis, guidance, while we rebuild the system from the inside." Jennifer inhaled slowly. Consultant. That word felt foreign in her current life, but familiar to the version of herself she thought she had left behind. She turned away for a moment, looking out at the city from the window. Her reflection stared back, cleaner uniform, tired eyes, quiet strength. Could she step back into that world again? Did she want to? She didn't have the answer yet. She faced him again. "I can't say yes tonight." "I'm not asking you to," Andrew answered immediately. I just want you to consider it." She appreciated that, more than she expected. "But," she added, "if you really want to fix the system, you start by removing the parts that erase people." Andrew nodded. "Agreed. And you monitor every stage, not just the final decision." "Absolutely. And no cutting corners." His lips twitched slightly, not amusement, but a quiet acknowledgement of her seriousness. "I wouldn't dare." She took one step closer, but only one. "I'll think about it," she said. "Maybe." Andrew nodded again, his expression sincere. "That's enough for now." Jennifer turned toward the door. "Jennifer?" he said softly. She paused. "I appreciate your honesty," he said, "and your patience, even if you don't think you've given any." She didn't respond, but something in her chest eased, just a little. She left the conference room, closing the door behind her. As she walked back toward the elevator, she carried a feeling she hadn't expected, not fear, not anger, not confusion. Possibility. Jennifer didn't give Andrew an answer immediately. She took 2 days to think, 2 days of tutoring sessions, quiet walks home, and long silences where she asked herself whether stepping forward would risk the fragile stability she'd built. But when she finally agreed to meet him for dinner, it wasn't because she trusted him. It was because she wanted clarity. She chose the restaurant, not a flashy center city spot, not a place with reservations booked months ahead. She picked a modest, intimate restaurant near the border of West Philly. Warm lighting, small tables, steady chatter from people who live nearby, a place that didn't demand pretense. She arrived 5 minutes early. Andrew was already there. He stood the moment he saw her walk in, smoothing his jacket in a gesture that looked almost nervous. She had never seen him like that, out of his element, stripped of his polished work persona. "Jennifer," he greeted, voice gentle. "You're early," she said, taking her seat. "I didn't want you waiting alone," he replied. She studied him briefly. His usual confidence was present but muted, toned down by something more human. It was strange seeing him without a crowd or a purpose tied to business. Here, he felt real, unexpectedly real. When the menus arrived, they ordered quietly. The server left water and stepped away. Silence held the table for a moment, not tense, just unfamiliar. Jennifer broke it. "You said this wasn't about you feeling guilty." "It isn't," Andrew said quickly. "I'm here because I owe you transparency, and because I want to understand." "Understand what?" "You," he admitted. She blinked at him, unsure whether to take the comment as disrespect or sincerity. He leaned in slightly, not in a personal way, not yet. "I mean, I want to understand how someone with your mind ended up in a position where a system erased you." Jennifer's chest tightened faintly. She looked down at her hands, then back at him. "Life doesn't move in straight lines, Andrew." "I know," he said softly, "but it shouldn't erase people either." She hadn't expected him to hold that stance so firmly. Their food arrived, giving them a momentary break from the heaviness. They ate in silence for a moment until Andrew spoke again, slowly, measured. "I need to admit something," he said. "It's not flattering." Jennifer lifted her eyes but didn't speak. "I've built my whole career on certainty," he continued. "People expect me to have answers, fast ones. They expect confidence, direction, control, and I learned to give them exactly that." She listened, steady and quiet. "But certainty becomes a performance," he said. "Sometimes I say things because I'm expected to say something, even when I'm still forming the real thought." "That's dangerous," she replied plainly. "I know," he murmured. "And in that lobby, I performed confidence instead of honesty. You exposed that without trying to." She didn't flinch. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you." "I know," he said again, voice low. "That's what made it worse. You weren't being confrontational. You were just right." She sat back slightly, studying him. This wasn't the slick CEO people saw in elevators or meetings. This was a man admitting he wasn't invincible. For the first time, she saw the loneliness under his practiced charm. "Do you have anyone to talk to about these things?" she asked. Andrew shook his head once. "Not really. Everyone sees the title first. People either want something from me or expect something from me. It's rare to just be human." Jennifer felt something shift inside her. Not attraction, not affection, but recognition. Being unseen in plain sight wasn't new to her. They lived on opposite ends of the hierarchy, yet carried similar silences. "Maybe," she said quietly. "That's why you didn't see me before." He looked at her, not defensively, not wounded, but with a kind of understanding that settled slowly. You're probably right, he whispered. For the first time that night, she softened. Only slightly, but it was there. You don't owe me access to your life, she said. But you did owe me honesty, and I appreciate that you're trying. Trying, he repeated with a faint smile. I can work with that. Their plates sat half finished, their drinks untouched as their conversation gradually loosened, shifting from confessions to smaller truths, childhood stories, past mistakes, their complicated relationships with ambition. At one point, Andrew laughed lightly at something she said, surprising himself. You're different than I expected, he murmured. She held his gaze steadily. You didn't expect much. No, he corrected softly. I didn't see enough. That's different. That acknowledgement struck a part of her she rarely let anyone touch. For the first time since the lobby incident, she felt the tightness behind her ribs ease. Dinner didn't fix anything. It didn't erase the past, but it shifted something meaningful, an opening neither of them anticipated. By the time they finished eating, Jennifer realized something unexpected. She no longer saw Andrew as the man who had dismissed her. She saw him as someone trying, really trying, to understand the damage his assumptions caused. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it was the beginning of something she couldn't ignore. When they stepped out of the restaurant, the air outside carried a mild chill, just enough to settle across Jennifer's shoulders. Night had crept in fully, scattering soft lights across the nearby streets. People passed by in small groups, laughter drifting faintly, but Jennifer and Andrew stepped into the evening as if the world around them had faded slightly. Their conversation from dinner still lingered, a quiet thread pulling them forward. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was gentle, human, honest, two people stepping into unfamiliar territory at the same time. They walked side by side toward the curb. Andrew spoke first. Before we go our separate ways tonight, I want to talk about the system again. The hiring pipeline. She glanced at him. You said you reviewed it. I did. His tone shifted into something steadier, more intentional. But reviewing isn't enough. I want to rebuild it correctly, and I want your guidance. You understand where it fails in a way I haven't. Jennifer folded her arms lightly, not defensive, simply thoughtful. It isn't complicated, Andrew. Systems fail when people assume they're neutral. Those algorithms didn't erase me because of logic. They erased me because they were designed without context. I know, he said. And that's exactly why I need your help. She looked at him carefully. If I agree to consult, there have to be terms. Of course, he replied immediately. Tell me. She stopped walking and faced him. First, you pay me, real compensation. No discounts, no thank you gestures disguised as opportunities. Done, he said without hesitation. Second, she continued, no special treatment in hiring. You don't push my resume to the top. You don't make backroom decisions. If I ever apply again, it must go through a fair system. Agreed, he said. And third, she added, we work transparently. No secret corrections, no pretending the problem never existed. He nodded again, this time with more weight. Absolutely. Jennifer studied him. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't trying to charm her into acceptance. He was simply present, listening, absorbing, adjusting. It disarmed her in a way she didn't expect. Okay, she finally said, her voice calm. Then I'll consider it. Andrew let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Thank you. They resumed walking slowly. The night air brushed past them again. Jennifer felt it settle against her neck, a subtle reminder of the temperature drop. She tightened her coat slightly, though the chill still lingered. Andrew noticed. He didn't overreact. He didn't make it dramatic. He simply reached up and unwound the scarf around his neck. Ear, he said, holding it out. Jennifer blinked. Andrew, no, I'm fine. I know you are, he replied softly. This isn't about assuming you can't handle the cold, it's just something I can offer. She hesitated. The gesture wasn't grand or flashy. It wasn't laced with pity. It felt simple, thoughtful, a small act of care with no expectation attached. She looked at him again. You don't have to do that. He smiled slightly. Maybe not, but I want to. Jennifer let out a slow breath. She wasn't accepting warmth. She was accepting sincerity. She took the scarf. Her fingers brushed his briefly, a light touch that neither of them commented on, but both of them felt. She wrapped the scarf around her neck, and the warmth surprised her more than the gesture. Thank you, she said quietly. Any time, he answered. They stood there for a moment, close enough to feel each other's presence but not close enough to cross a line. The passing headlights reflected faintly across his face, softening the polished look she was used to seeing. For a brief second, she wondered how someone with his life could still carry a loneliness she recognized so clearly. She didn't voice that thought. Instead, she asked, "Why did you really show up tonight?" He met her eyes honestly. "Because for once, I didn't want to hide behind company walls. I wanted to talk to you without a title in the room." She felt the words settle. Not flirtation, not manipulation, just truth. "And because," he added, a small pause in his voice, "you challenged me. And I needed it." Jennifer looked down at the pavement, then back at him. "I wasn't trying to change anything." "I know," he said softly. "That's why it mattered." A quiet spark passed between them, unspoken, subtle, but undeniable. It wasn't romance yet. It wasn't a confession. It was a shift, a new place in their dynamic neither had stood in before. She cleared her throat gently. "I should get home. I'll call a ride for you," he offered. "No," she said with a small smile. "I can manage." He didn't argue. He simply nodded. But before she stepped away, she said, "Good night, Andrew." His reply came warm and steady. "Good night, Jennifer." She walked away slowly, the scarf wrapped around her neck, the scent of fabric softener, faint but comforting. Behind her, Andrew remained on the sidewalk, watching her go, not with ownership, but with a quiet respect that hadn't existed before tonight. Jennifer didn't turn back, but for the first time she allowed herself to acknowledge something genuine, a spark, not loud, not dangerous, just real. Jennifer didn't give Andrew a final answer that night, but she carried his scarf home, wrapped carefully in her hands after stepping off the bus. She placed it neatly on her dresser before preparing for bed, staring at it for a moment longer than she meant to, not because of what it was, but because of what it represented. A shift, a beginning, something she wasn't ready to name. The following week moved differently. Jennifer's routine stayed the same, early shifts, tutoring sessions, community errands, but the air around her felt subtly changed. She thought about the dinner more than she intended to, replaying his tone, his sincerity, the quiet heaviness behind his confession, and she thought about his request. By the end of the week, after hours of internal tug-of-war, Jennifer finally agreed to consult, carefully, conditionally, and with every boundary she had already stated. When she sent the message confirming, she expected a simple acknowledgement. Instead, Andrew replied, "Thank you. I'll make sure the team prepares the full pipeline report for you, and I'll be there to answer whatever you need." The next day, Jennifer walked into the building not as the cleaner who drifted through hallways unnoticed, but as someone returning with a purpose she had buried long ago. She clocked in, stored her personal items, then headed to the top floor at the scheduled time. When the elevator opened, Andrew was already waiting, on time, focused, ready. "Good morning, Jennifer," he said, stepping forward. "Morning," she replied, steady but composed. He didn't lead her into a boardroom full of people. He didn't summon a team to watch her work. Instead, he guided her into a quiet workspace with a large table, 2 chairs, and several printed reports neatly stacked and labeled. He had prepared everything himself. "I wanted to make sure this was clear before you started," he said, handing her the first folder. "These are the raw screening logs, unedited. No one touched them after I reviewed them." Jennifer nodded, taking her seat. "Good." As she began reading, Andrew stood quietly to the side, hands clasped loosely behind him. He didn't hover. He didn't comment. He simply remained present, waiting for her direction. After several minutes, she lifted her eyes. "The flagging algorithm is too rigid. It eliminates applicants based on time gaps without context." He moved closer. "I suspected that. What else?" She pointed to a highlighted section. "These tags, low alignment, inconsistent employment history, non-traditional work experience, are coded language. They penalize people with backgrounds like mine." Andrew took a seat beside her, his expression tightening with realization. "You're right." Jennifer continued flipping through pages, guiding him through each flawed layer. His usual confidence softened into humility, not weakness, but accountability. He wasn't defending the system. He was learning from its failures, and he was learning from her. Over the next week, they established a rhythm. Jennifer cleaned during her regular hours, then joined Andrew for structured consultation sessions. He listened, truly listened, absorbing every point she made, asking questions only to deepen understanding rather than challenge expertise. Small gestures began appearing in quiet ways. One morning, when she entered the workspace, he had already placed a cup of tea on the table. "You mentioned yesterday that this is your favorite," he said. Another evening, after a long shift left her exhausted, she stepped out the back exit to find Andrew waiting. Not in a flashy car, not in an imposing stance, but leaning against the wall with his coat draped over his arm. "You shouldn't walk home this late," he said gently. "I can wait with you until your ride arrives." She almost refused, but something in his tone, something steady and sincere, made her nod instead. He didn't fill the silence with empty conversation. He simply stood there, shoulder to shoulder with her, respectful and patient. It was nice, not overwhelming, not intrusive, just nice. A week later, Andrew invited her to a fundraiser. He asked carefully, "You don't have to come. I just think you should see the spaces where decisions get made." She agreed, partly out of curiosity and partly to understand the world he moved through. The venue was polished and bright, filled with people whose clothing, posture, and smiles carried a particular kind of practiced ease. Jennifer wore a simple black dress, elegant but understated. She didn't try to fade into the background. She simply stood as herself, but others had their assumptions ready. A woman with a jeweled clutch approached Andrew with an overly polite smile. "Oh, Andrew, wonderful that you're mentoring." She glanced at Jennifer with a sugary expression. "It's admirable to support growth." Jennifer didn't flinch, but she felt the familiar sting of being mislabeled. Before she could respond, Andrew stepped forward slightly. "Jennifer is not being mentored," he said firmly. "She's advising us. Her expertise is essential to our hiring redesign." The woman's smile faltered. "Oh, I didn't realize." "You should," Andrew interrupted gently, not harshly. "She's the most qualified person on this project." A few heads turned. Jennifer felt warmth rise under her skin. Not embarrassment, but something far more surprising. Protection, respect, recognition. Later in the evening, after the crowd had thinned, Jennifer found herself watching Andrew from across the room. He wasn't performing for her. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was simply being consistent, thoughtful, present, quietly supportive. And that consistency did something to her heart she didn't expect. She didn't fall all at once. She didn't soften dramatically. She simply felt a shift, a gentle, steady opening, a place where trust might begin. Not loudly, not quickly, quietly. If you're loving Jennifer and Andrew's journey, like and subscribe to join the Gray family community. Jennifer arrived at the top floor workspace 3 days later, with a quiet determination pressing beneath her calm exterior. She placed her bag beside the chair, opened the latest stack of reports Andrew had arranged for her, and began reviewing them methodically. Each spreadsheet revealed patterns she recognized instantly because she had lived inside their consequences. But today, something new caught her attention. A subtle column, a set of codes, location indicators disguised as neutral markers. She leaned closer, tracing the pattern across multiple sheets. The codes didn't specify exact addresses, but the algorithm sorted candidates based on location clusters aligned with zip codes from lower-income neighborhoods. Applicants from those areas were automatically flagged as low suitability, a proxy, a silent filter, a buried red line through entire communities. Her jaw tightened, not from shock, but from the confirmation of what she already suspected. The system didn't just fail individuals, it erased neighborhoods. She flipped to the next set of pages, employment histories. The algorithm penalized gaps between jobs, multiple short-term positions, shifts between unrelated industries, everything the working poor often carried simply by surviving. She placed the papers down with deliberate calm. This wasn't negligence. This was programmed bias hidden behind corporate language. She stood up, took several steps toward the window, and let the city's skyline steady her. The truth didn't surprise her, but it still burned. Behind her, the door opened. Andrew entered quietly. "You found something?" She didn't turn yet. "Yes." He stepped closer, reading her posture before her words. "How bad is it?" Jennifer finally faced him, her voice controlled but firm. "Your system screens out entire communities before a human ever sees their resume." Andrew's expression tightened with confusion. "You mean?" "I mean, zip code discrimination." She lifted the report. "Your algorithm treats poverty as disqualification." He reached for the papers, scanning quickly. The realization settled across his face slowly, like a truth he wanted to deny but couldn't. "I didn't know," he said quietly. You didn't ask, she replied, not with anger, but with truth he needed to hear. He lowered the papers. What else? She pointed to another section. Employment bias. If someone worked multiple short-term jobs, the system labels them unstable. If they changed industries, it labels them inconsistent. Andrew's voice dropped. That's not fair. No, she said. It isn't. He exhaled, running a hand along the table's edge. This is worse than I expected. Jennifer didn't soften. People like me never stood a chance in your system, not because we weren't qualified, but because the filter decided we weren't worth considering. The words hung between them, weighted with lived experience. Andrew swallowed. I thought automation would make the process equitable. Automation reflects the biases of whoever built it, she said. Neutrality doesn't exist without intentional fairness. He turned fully toward her. So what do we do? Jennifer held his gaze. You fix it publicly. His brows lifted. Publicly? Yes, she said. If you repair this silently, the system stays broken everywhere else. Companies copy each other's tools. If you redesign yours openly, people will follow your lead. Andrew considered this, the seriousness visible in the set of his shoulders. You're asking me to expose a flaw in my own company? No, she corrected softly. I'm asking you to lead. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at her with something deeper than respect, something close to realization. The woman standing in front of him had once been erased by this system, yet she was now the one showing him how to rebuild it. You're right, he finally said, voice steady. We'll fix it publicly. Jennifer nodded once. Good. He stepped closer, not invading her space, but aligning himself with her decision. Thank you for finding this. She held his gaze. Thank you for choosing to see it. They stood there for a moment, not adversaries, not just colleagues, but two people standing on the same side of the truth for the first time. Andrew broke the silence with a quiet breath. This changes everything. Good, Jennifer said. It should, and it would. Not just for her, for everyone who had been erased long before they ever had a chance to be seen. The boardroom on the top floor was nothing like the quiet workspace where Jennifer usually reviewed the reports. This room carried power in its architecture. Long glass table, high-backed chairs, and a polished surface that reflected every expression with alarming clarity. The walls were lined with framed achievements, and the view behind the windows stretched endlessly across Philadelphia. Jennifer stepped inside with measured steps. She wasn't intimidated. She wasn't impressed. She was focused. Andrew stood near the head of the table, reviewing some notes on a tablet. His posture was sharper today, shoulders squared, jaw set with a seriousness that showed he understood the weight of what they were about to address. The board members filtered in one by one. Their conversations were low, professional, polite, until their eyes landed on Jennifer. Some nodded. Some stared a moment too long. Some looked confused, unsure why she was present at a meeting reserved for top-level decisions. Andrew cleared his throat once the last member took their seat. Thank you for coming, he began. We have a major system issue to address, and I've asked Jennifer to join us today. Murmurs rippled across the table. One board member smiled, too politely. Ah, good. It's wonderful we're taking steps to support her development. Jennifer froze only for a second. There it was, the patronizing tone. The reduction of her presence to a charity gesture. She inhaled slowly, letting the moment settle before she responded. I'm not here for development, she said, her voice clear. I'm here to correct the system producing discriminatory outcomes. Every head turned toward her. Another board member leaned forward, clearly perplexed. Discriminatory? Jennifer remained calm. Yes. Your hiring algorithm eliminates applicants using zip code proxies and employment history markers that disproportionately affect lower-income communities. People are screened out before anyone evaluates their qualifications. The room went quiet. Jennifer reached for the folder she brought and placed it on the table. Your system isn't neutral. It's coded to filter out people like me before they ever stand a chance. One board member frowned. That's a serious claim. It's not a claim, she corrected. It's evidence. She slid several pages across the table. They picked them up one by one, scanning with widening eyes. She watched as tension formed in their brows, as surprise gave way to discomfort. One of the older members cleared his throat. And how exactly did you discover this? Jennifer answered without hesitation. Because it happened to me. A soft gasp stirred the room. Andrew stepped in. Her resume never reached hiring managers. The system itself screened her out, and she has a doctorate degree. A heavy pause swallowed the room. Another member attempted diplomacy. Well, perhaps the algorithm needs minor adjustment. Jennifer's gaze sharpened. Minor adjustments don't correct structural bias. The table fell silent again. A younger board member leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. If these patterns are accurate, that means our process has been compromised for years. Jennifer nodded. Yes. And if you want to repair the damage, you must fix it openly. Public accountability forces broader change. Someone scoffed lightly under his breath. Public? You want us to announce our shortcomings? Jennifer didn't blink. Hiding it preserves harm. Correcting it publicly prevents it from happening elsewhere. Andrew finally placed his tablet on the table, his voice firm. She's right. Some members stiffened at the tone. He wasn't asking for their approval, he was informing them. One older executive looked irritated. Andrew, you're suggesting we expose the company to criticism. Criticism we deserve, Andrew replied. A few heads turned sharply at his boldness. Jennifer watched him, quietly but intently. This wasn't the man she corrected in the lobby. This was someone stepping into accountability without flinching. Another member muttered, "We need more certainty before we move forward." That was it, the moment she had anticipated. Jennifer placed a single sheet of highlighted data back on the table. You want certainty? Her tone was steady. Then let's use the correct language. She tapped the page softly. Causation. Silence erupted into stillness. The word echoed like a callback to the lobby moment, a reminder of where this journey began, and of the truth she refused to dilute. Several board members exchanged looks, uneasy, unsettled, aware that the dynamic in the room had shifted entirely. Andrew looked at her with something deeper than admiration, respect laced with gratitude. He addressed the table again. This is no longer a question of whether the system is flawed. It is flawed. Now we decide what leadership looks like in response. Another pause. Then slowly, one by one, heads nodded. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. They would fix the system. They would announce it publicly. They would rebuild transparency into every stage of the process. When the meeting adjourned, board members left the room with stiff postures and shaken certainty. Jennifer remained by the table, gathering her notes. Andrew approached, lowering his voice. You were incredible. She looked up at him evenly. I wasn't trying to be incredible. I was trying to be accurate. That, he said softly, is what makes you remarkable. She didn't blush, didn't flinch, but something warm flickered quietly inside her. For the first time since the boardroom filled, she allowed herself to exhale. Today, she didn't just correct a system. She corrected an entire room of people who had never expected to be challenged by someone like her. And now, they knew better. The boardroom emptied slowly, leaving behind the echo of conversations that once held power, but now felt small compared to what had just unfolded. Jennifer stood alone for a moment, letting the quiet settle around her. She had held her own in a space that wasn't designed for her, and she had done it without raising her voice or shrinking her presence. She gathered the last of her notes, slid them into her folder, and stepped out into the hallway. Andrew was waiting. He wasn't leaning casually or scrolling through his phone. He was standing with an attentive stillness, hands in his pockets, breathing steady, as if he had been replaying the boardroom moment in his mind. When he saw her, a faint smile formed. Not wide, not dramatic, just warm. You handled yourself with more control than most executives I've met, he said softly. Jennifer tilted her head slightly. You sound surprised. Not surprised, he corrected. Impressed. She didn't answer, but he could see the acknowledgement in her eyes. They walked toward the elevator together in comfortable silence, not the awkward kind. This was quieter, heavier, threaded with everything unspoken between them. The elevator arrived with a soft chime, and they stepped inside. The doors closed. The hum of the machinery was the only sound for a moment. Jennifer's thoughts were still in the boardroom, the coded biases, the uneasy stares, the moment she reclaimed the narrative with a single word. But Andrew's presence beside her shifted the air. As the elevator descended, he cleared his throat lightly. Jennifer, he said, eyes forward but voice gentle, I want you to know something. She glanced at him. What is it? You didn't just help the company today, you changed it. Permanently. People will work here who never would have had a chance. He paused. Because of you. His sincerity reached her before his words finished settling. She looked away briefly, steadying herself. Praise didn't move her easily, but honesty did. Accountability had to start somewhere, she said quietly. It started with you, he replied. The elevator continued downward, stopping briefly at a lower floor, but no one entered. They were still alone. As the doors closed again, Andrew shifted slightly closer, not enough to invade her space, but enough that she could sense his breath when he exhaled slowly. There was something different in his posture tonight. Not confidence, not command, something far more vulnerable. May I tell you something else? He asked. Only if it's the truth, she replied. His eyes met hers, steady and unguarded. You make me better. Jennifer felt the words land in a part of her she had kept barricaded for years. She didn't look away. She didn't retreat. She held his gaze, letting the meaning settle between them. You made yourself better, she said. You chose to listen. He shook his head slightly. I chose to listen because of you. A long, quiet moment stretched between them, charged, delicate, impossible to ignore. The elevator slowed as it approached the lobby, the soft whir of machinery lowering its rhythm. Andrew's gaze dropped briefly to her lips before returning to her eyes, and the small movement sent a subtle ripple through the small space. Jennifer's heart beat once, hard, clear. Before either of them spoke, the elevator stopped. But the doors didn't open. A slight delay, a mechanical pause, held them suspended. The moment clicked into place. Jennifer stepped closer, not impulsively, not shyly, but with intention. She lifted her hand and straightened the knot of his tie. The gesture was fluid, natural, intimate in a way neither of them had allowed before. Andrew's breath caught softly. Her fingertips brushed his collarbone as she adjusted the fabric. When she lowered her hand, the space between them felt impossibly small. Jennifer. He started, voice low. She didn't let him finish. She leaned in and kissed him, soft, confident, and controlled. Not rushed, not tentative. A kiss that carried clarity, not confusion. A kiss that said she wasn't stepping into something fragile or uncertain. She was choosing it. Andrew responded with equal gentleness, one hand lifting to her waist but stopping short, letting her decide how close to stand. She stayed where she was, her lips lingering against his with a slow inhale before she finally pulled back. When she opened her eyes, his expression held something new, something that wasn't infatuation or surprise. It was recognition, the kind that comes when two people stop pretending a line hasn't already been crossed. The elevator doors finally slid open with a soft chime. Neither of them moved at first. Jennifer stepped out slowly, turning back to face him. This doesn't change the work, she said. I know, he replied, but it changes us. His voice matched hers. It does. She didn't smile, but her eyes softened. Good night, Andrew. Good night, Jennifer. The doors closed between them with a quiet finality, leaving both of them standing in separate spaces with the same truth. Whatever this was, whatever it was becoming, it was no longer just professional. It was something neither of them could ignore, and neither of them wanted to. West Philly came alive in a way no boardroom ever could. Colorful tents lined the sidewalks, grills smoked with seasoned chicken and ribs, kids darted between folding chairs, and music flowed from every direction. Old-school tracks, laughter layered on top, voices rising in rhythm. It was a block party that felt like home, a celebration built on community, history, and generations of shared living. Jennifer walked through the crowd with an ease she rarely felt anywhere else. Neighbors called her name, someone handed her a plate, and an older woman waved a fan, dramatically as she said, "Girl, you better come grab some of this potato salad." For the first time that week, Jennifer felt her shoulders loosen. She let herself enjoy the warmth around her, the familiar scents, the sounds, the comfort of being in a place that never asked her to shrink or apologize. But just as she reached for a cup of lemonade, conversation softened around her. Not stopped, softened. She didn't have to turn to know why. Andrew had arrived. He didn't push forward or call out her name. He stood at the edge of the block, taking everything in. The music, the people, the atmosphere that was so different from the polished floors and sleek architecture of his world. Jennifer blinked, surprised despite herself. They had never planned for him to come here. This wasn't his environment. This wasn't where CEOs casually showed up. She walked toward him slowly. "What are you doing here?" Andrew gave her a steady, unembarrassed answer. "You once said leadership means showing up. I figured I should take that seriously." Her breath caught slightly, not because he came, but because he remembered. And, he added gently, I wanted to see your world. Not from a report, not from a distance, from you. Jennifer didn't smile, but something inside her warmed. Before she could respond, Keisha materialized beside her like a storm cloud ready to strike. Well, Keisha said, folding her arms. So this is Andrew. Andrew straightened politely. Nice to meet you. Keisha raised a brow. We'll see about that, Jennifer muttered. Keisha. What? Keisha whispered loudly. You brought a CEO to the block party. I'm doing my job. Andrew didn't flinch. If anything, he softened his posture, showing respect rather than defensiveness. Keisha moved closer, examining him like a product on a shelf. So, Andrew, you comfortable out here? He answered honestly. I'm learning. Keisha stared at him another second, then nodded once. Good. Because if you're here for the wrong reasons, this whole block will escort you back to Center City real fast. Keisha, Jennifer warned again. Andrew didn't laugh. He didn't recoil. He simply nodded. Understood. That answer surprised even Keisha. She tilted her head. Okay, Jennifer. I see the appeal. Jennifer nearly choked. Keisha smirked and walked off, leaving the two of them standing there in the swirl of community life. Jennifer crossed her arms lightly. You didn't have to come. I wanted to, he said simply. You've welcomed me into your work, into your truth. I owe it to you to understand the place you come from, not just the world I inhabit. She didn't expect that level of awareness. Not here. Not in this context. You're out of place, she said, though her voice lacked sharpness. I know, he replied. But that's why I came. She studied him closely, the expensive shoes now gathering dust, the shirt sleeves rolled just enough to look human instead of formal, the gentleness in his expression. He wasn't performing. He wasn't pretending to blend in. He was present, and he wasn't afraid of not belonging. Jennifer took a slow breath. Stay close to me. Andrew nodded. Always. As they walked deeper into the block party, neighbors continued to glance his way, curious, assessing, measuring. But Jennifer stood beside him, and that alone eased the edges. Someone called her name from across the street. Someone else waved. Kids ran past, nearly bumping into Andrew, who stepped aside gracefully. Bit by bit, the community began to accept his presence, not because he demanded it, but because he didn't. He didn't force charm. He didn't claim authority. He didn't try to fit in. He simply existed beside Jennifer with quiet respect. And that, more than anything, made the neighborhood soften toward him. Jennifer walked ahead slightly, glancing back at him. He caught her eye, and the warmth in his expression settled deeper than words. This wasn't just two worlds colliding. This was the beginning of something merging, carefully, slowly, honestly. For the first time, Jennifer let herself imagine what it might look like if he belonged here. And if she belonged in his world too. That thought alone tightened her chest in a way that felt both new and right. The block party kept swelling with energy, kids shrieking with playful joy, uncles bragging over domino tables, aunties dancing with plates in their hands, the grill masters boasting about who made the best sauce. It was the heartbeat of West Philly, loud and warm enough to swallow a person whole. And in the middle of it all, Andrew, CEO, polished, structured, was trying to find where he fit. Jennifer watched from a short distance as he moved carefully through the crowd. He didn't adopt a false swagger or an awkward smile. He stayed quiet at first, observing respectfully, learning the rhythm of a neighborhood that refused to shrink itself for anyone. Then, slowly, he began stepping into the current. A group of kids darted past him again, one nearly colliding into his leg. This time, Andrew crouched slightly and said, "You okay?" The boy nodded, then tossed a football lightly into Andrew's hands before sprinting off. Andrew stared at the ball for half a second, clearly surprised, but then he threw it back in a clean spiral. The boy shouted, "Hey, he got an arm." Laughter erupted from nearby chairs. Jennifer shook her head softly. He was trying, really trying. Keisha approached Jennifer with folded arms and a sly grin. "Look at him. Mr. CEO over there making friends with the neighborhood kids. He's adapting," Jennifer murmured. Keisha said. "And you're watching him like he's the evening news." Jennifer shot her a look. "I'm observing." "Observing," Keisha repeated dramatically. "Right." Meanwhile, Andrew had been pulled toward a table where an older man was dominating a domino game. You any good? The man asked. Andrew lifted a brow. At what? Dominoes, son. I've never played. The table went quiet. Then the older man laughed so hard he slapped his knee. Pull up a chair. We'll teach you. Jennifer expected Andrew to decline politely. Instead, he sat, and he listened carefully as rules were explained. He didn't pretend he knew anything. He didn't try to impress. He let himself be taught, patiently, humbly. And when he made his first move, placing a tile exactly where the older man pointed, the table erupted with cheers like he had won a championship. See? He's teachable. Someone hollered. Jennifer felt something warm unfurl in her chest. He wasn't just making an appearance. He was earning his place. A neighbor approached her with a plate. This your man? Jennifer nearly dropped her drink. He's Andrew. That didn't answer my question, the neighbor said with a wink before walking off. Jennifer rubbed her forehead. Her community was many things. Subtle was not one of them. But as she continued watching Andrew, her resistance softened. He wasn't hovering behind her. He wasn't seeking praise. He wasn't shrinking from unfamiliarity. He was present, respectful, willing. A rare combination. Later, as the sun dipped lower and the warmth of the evening shifted into a gentler cool, the music changed to something smoother. People formed small dancing circles. Kids chased each other with glow sticks and the scent of grilled corn drifted through the air. Jennifer moved toward a table to grab another drink, and Andrew approached from behind with a cautious smile. How am I doing? He asked. She looked him over. His shirt sleeves were slightly wrinkled from playing ball. His hair was windswept. He had a faint smudge of food on his wrist he didn't notice. You're surviving, she said. Only surviving? She raised a brow. Thriving. Moderately. He laughed softly, rubbing the back of his neck. Your world is different from mine. Yes, she said, but it's real. It's honest. He nodded. I can feel that. People here, they treat you with truth first, politeness second. That's West Philly. It feels grounded, he said quietly. She studied him for a moment, noticing how his shoulders weren't tight the way they were in the boardroom, how he wasn't calculating his next move, how he let himself simply be. Then, without thinking too long or too hard, she reached for his hand. His breath caught. Her fingertips brushed his palm first, then her hand slid fully into his, warm and deliberate. It wasn't romantic performance. It wasn't a declaration. It was acknowledgement, of effort, of sincerity, of something growing between them that neither could deny anymore. Andrew curled his fingers gently around hers. It felt right. Some neighbors noticed. A few nodded approvingly. Keisha's eyebrows flew so high they nearly left her forehead. Well, damn, she whispered from across the way with a grin. Jennifer ignored her, squeezing Andrew's hand softly before guiding him toward the food tent. He walked beside her without hesitation, fitting into her stride naturally. For the first time since she brought him here, he didn't look out of place. And for the first time in a very long time, Jennifer felt the beginning of a possibility she no longer feared. He wasn't just stepping into her world. He was earning it, piece by piece, hand in hand. The block party began to mellow as evening light softened across the buildings. The music slowed into smooth, warm tracks that hummed through the neighborhood like a comfortable heartbeat. Kids settled with plates of food. Elders shifted into long conversations in folding chairs, and the sky dipped into shades of orange and deep blue. Jennifer and Andrew stood near the edge of the street, not far from the row of tents where the last of the grilled corn was being served. The glow from string lights reflected faintly across their faces. The energy around them had shifted, no longer loud, no longer curious, just a calm acceptance woven into the night. Jennifer still held his hand. It astonished her how natural it felt, and how right. Andrew glanced around, absorbing the atmosphere one last time. It's beautiful out here, he murmured. It always is, she replied. He looked at her then, not at her hand, not at the scarf he once gave her, not at the block that welcomed her home, but at her. Fully, with a depth that reached further than admiration. You seem more yourself here, he said softly. Jennifer met his gaze without looking away. This place made me. That's why I wanted to see it, he admitted. I wanted to understand where your strength comes from. She lifted a brow slightly. Strength? He nodded. You stand firm, even when the room isn't built for you. You speak with clarity even when people underestimate you. And you don't let power sway you. That takes strength most people never learn. Jennifer inhaled slowly. His words landed with a gentleness that pressed into her chest. She didn't melt. She didn't blush. But she felt seen in a way few had ever offered. A soft track drifted over the speakers, steady bass, smooth vocals, the kind of song couples often sway to without planning it. Andrew stepped a little closer. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends," she said. He swallowed lightly. "Do I fit here? Not perfectly, not effortlessly, just do I fit enough to stand beside you?" Jennifer looked up at him, holding the weight of the question. It wasn't about the block party. It wasn't even about her community. It was about her life, about letting someone in past the carefully built walls she had learned to rely on. "You didn't show up trying to take up space," she said. "You showed up trying to understand. That matters." He exhaled, relieved, not because she praised him, but because she saw him clearly. The music softened further. The wind brushed lightly across her hair. People around them swayed, laughed, drifted, but it felt like the world was narrowing its focus to just them. Jennifer stepped a little closer. "Andrew." "Yes?" he said, voice low. She watched him for a long moment, long enough to study the honesty in his expression, the steady rise and fall of his breath, the way he wasn't performing tonight. Not as a CEO, not as a charmer, just as a man trying to earn a place in her life. She spoke quietly. "Tell me the truth. All of it. No hesitation." He nodded. "Ask anything." Jennifer's voice softened. "Why did you come into my life the way you did? Not the lobby moment, the part after. The part where you started showing up when you didn't have to." Andrew's eyes didn't flicker or drift. He answered directly, without searching for the right words. "Because somewhere along the way," he said, "I stopped thinking about how you challenged me and started thinking about how you changed me." Her breath stilled. "And then," he continued, "I realized the change wasn't about the company or the system. It was about me wanting to be someone worthy of standing beside you." The sincerity in his voice quieted everything around her. Jennifer stepped closer until only a small space remained between them. In the soft light, with the evening breeze moving gently around them, she said, "Say it plainly." He didn't hesitate. "I'm in love with you." The words struck her, not because they shocked her, but because they didn't. Every moment leading to now had been pointing here, the scarf, the boardroom support, the way he listened, the way he saw her with intention instead of assumption. She let silence sit for a heartbeat. Then she whispered, "Say it again." He breathed out, steady. "I'm in love with you, Jennifer." She closed the final distance, lifting her hand to his face, not rushed, not dramatic, just soft, deliberate touch. Her thumb brushed his jaw, and he leaned into it instinctively. Then she kissed him, not like the elevator kiss, quiet but charged. This kiss carried acceptance. This kiss carried choice. This kiss carried the beginning of something no longer fragile or uncertain. His hand moved to her waist, gentle, grounded, letting her lead the pace. She deepened the kiss by a breath, slow and certain, then pulled back just enough to speak. "Then we'll go forward," she said, "without performance." He nodded, forehead resting lightly against hers. Without performance, the block party seemed to hush around them, even as music continued playing in the background. Jennifer looked at him, voice steady. "But understand this, love doesn't erase the work." "I know," he replied, "and it doesn't replace truth. It never will." She smiled, not wide, but real. "Good, because this wasn't fantasy. This wasn't rescue. This wasn't status. This was two people choosing each other with open eyes." Andrew took her hand again, not as a question this time, but as a quiet bond forming. And as they walked back toward the center of the block party, surrounded by her community, Jennifer whispered the final lesson of her story, one she had lived long before she spoke it. "Never judge the book by its cover," she said, "because you might miss the whole library." The night settled warm around them. Two worlds, now one choice. Two hearts, now one direction. A love that earned its place. Family, if this story touched you, like, comment, and subscribe so I can bring more inspiring stories your way.